When we talk about beauty in art, the female body often takes the spotlight. But what about the male body? At the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, fondly known as the Met, 4 unforgettable paintings show us how artists across time imagine the male form: heroic, vulnerable, exotic, and defiant. These aren't just bodies, they're reflections of what masculinity meant in each historical moment. And by the end of this video, you might see them, and maybe even yourself, a little differently. The first one that I'm going to show you today is called The Death of Socrates. It's from 1787, and it is by Jacques-Louis David. Now, this one is one of the most famous paintings in the entire Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's actually one of the most famous paintings in art history. You've probably seen me talk about it already if you saw my video, The Top 10 Paintings in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. If not, check it out. But today, I'm going to talk about it in a different light. So this painting of the moments before the death of Socrates, really, was completed just before the French Revolution. It was at the height of Enlightenment thought, but it's hearkening back to that classic Greek thought. David retells the ancient story of Socrates, who was convicted of impiety and corrupting the youth by the Athenian courts, and he was sentenced to death. But rather than renounce his beliefs, Socrates here, with his strong, steady, resolute body, calmly accepts the cup of hemlock poison, expounding on the immortality of the soul in his final moments. This actually connects Greek philosophy to Christianity as well in that sense, where the main protagonist of the story is bringing home that message of the immortality of the soul. David structures the scene like a classical frieze. Every gesture here is deliberate. Each figure reacts differently to Socrates' moral clarity. Their bodies react differently, and they paint the scene. The artist consulted antiquarian scholars to get the setting right. Details like the clothing and the furniture are archaeologically exact. Yet he also introduces symbolic elements, like placing Plato, who wasn't really even present at the event, according to the sources. He places him at the foot of the bed to signal the source of the narrative, the Phaedo. Socrates' body is painted with sculptural precision. It is painted youthfully, it is idealized, and it's muscular, even though he was 70 years old at the time of his death. Why? Because for David the painter, the male body was a tool of philosophy. Strength here doesn't suggest violence or dominance. It symbolizes self-mastery, the body as a vessel of pure reason. The key idea here is that the male body becomes moral architecture. It isn't just beautiful, it's instructive. Socrates' body teaches us how to live and how to die. The second of the 4 paintings that I'm going to study with you here today, all 4 being in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, probably the greatest encyclopedic art museum in the world. The second one is called A Study of a Nude Man. The title sounds really boring, but the painting is anything but. It was attributed to the very famous painter Gustave Courbet. Courbet has other works here in the Met that are wonderful, and they are worth a trip to come and see in and of themselves. But this painting is a new acquisition by the Met. It's a little known study. It was acquired by the Met back in 2020, and it's believed to be a student work by Gustave Courbet, painted shortly after he arrived in Paris in 1839. So this is how the young genius painted, and his depiction of the male body is probably one of the most epic and quintessential of the era that you'll see in any art museum. At the time, Courbet studied under a man named Baron Charles de Steuben, and briefly at the Académie Suisse. This was a period when painting the unclothed male body was seen as the highest test of skill in the academic system. The model is slightly twisted, one arm above his head. There's no narrative in this painting. That's different from the last painting, obviously. It's just a man, just the male body, posed in a studio, captured in natural light. The painting isn't about heroism, and it isn't about mythology. There's no idealization, there's just observation. This is what makes it revolutionary in hindsight. And it's also a huge change. This painting's painted in the 1840s. The last painting was painted in 1787. But so much changed in just that short time span. We're moving into the age of industrialization. Science has become more paramount, and we're getting more into the observation of nature and the way things are rather than the idealization. So it's a really fascinating painting to look at in simply that respect. Courbet would later reject academic tradition and become the father of a movement in painting. It's one of my favorite movements, really. It's called realism. This work stands at the threshold of that transformation, absorbing the rules before challenging them. So it's a really precious piece to see here at the Met. Few such works from Courbet's earliest years survive. The origins of this one remain obscure, but it captures the spirit of an artist learning to see bodies as they are, particularly the male body, not as they were supposed to be. So this is a flipping on its head of the whole idea of the idealized male form. It's not bulky, it's not perfectly sculpted. I mean, this man is obviously slim and fit, but it is not a heroic pose. His muscles aren't huge like someone who would be fighting in an army or a Spartan warrior. This is the male body stripped of myth. Not yet an icon, not yet a symbol, just a body. But in that, it holds the seed of something radical in painting. The next painting really just pretty much leapt out at me. It's actually in a hallway as you are walking from the special exhibitions area kind of through to the front of the museum on the top floor, and you're walking past all of the European painting wings and rooms from the 19th century. So I was passing it, I wasn't even intending on looking at it, but it just absolutely sucked me in, probably first and foremost because of the color and the subject matter, and I'm also very interested in when we see the male body shown in different forms, because I find it very fascinating that in different time periods, there was a different ideal and a different way to see men and what men should or should not look like. This is called A Man on a Diving Board, and the artist is Norwegian, Aksel Waldemar Johannessen. It was painted in 1912, so we're talking about modern art here. This is expressionist modernism. So this haunting composition, I would say, shows a man perched on a diving board. His back is hunched, his muscles are taut, and his body is suspended between decision and action. So what's happening here in this modernism is we're using the body as a tool to show a conflicting emotion, which I find very fascinating. His face is completely hidden, which is also really interesting because the body has to say everything in itself. Only his form is visible as he stares downward. Below, a woman floats in the water, and her shape is blurred and fluid, and in my opinion, almost edging on abstract. Johannessen, a craftsman and theater designer in Oslo, imbued the scene with stark contrasts. The angular tension of the man's figure against the softness of the woman's, the hard edges of the board against the formless waters. He's really playing with form here, and the body fits perfectly into that. His painting technique is expressive but restrained, focused more on a psychological weight than on sensual appeal, even though it could have gone either way. This work was never shown in his lifetime. Johannessen died of pneumonia in 1922. He was an alcoholic, and he was virtually unknown. A memorial retrospective the following year brought his work to light, where Edvard Munch declared his paintings among the most remarkable I have ever encountered. Remember, that meant a lot. Edvard Munch is the famous painter who did the Scream. So why was the male body painted this way in this painting? The male form here is not displayed for admiration. It's withheld and it's tense, it's isolated. It becomes a figure of uncertainty, alienation, and maybe even fear, definitely nervousness. The key idea here, this body does not represent power. It carries emotional weight. It's not about what we see, but how he feels. Masculinity here is pressure without release. The last painting that I'm going to talk about today in this short study of the male body explored at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York is called a Bashi-Bazouk, and it's by Charles Bargue. It's from 1875, and this is the first painting in the series that is going to be a person of color. And it was, of course, exoticized, which is what was being done at the time in 1875, but it ends up being a fascinating painting of the way someone from another country and culture was seen through the Western eyes, through the eyes of the art history and heritage that we have mostly in Western civilization in Europe and the United States. But first of all, before I go into that, if you are enjoying this video, make sure to click a like, leave a comment, and let me know if you've seen some other pieces here at the Met that you think I should explore from this perspective. And make sure to take a look at the video that I did about the top 10 pieces at the Met. If you go to the Met, you have to see the greatest hits. I did the same thing for MoMA, and I did the same thing for the Frick, which recently opened. So those are all really cool videos to check out. I hope to see you around. Now let's get back into this final painting because it's just really cool work. It is French. It's called Academic Orientalism. It's oil on canvas, just like all these paintings were today. The figure here, like I said before, the title, it's Bashi-Bazouk. There are actually several paintings. There's a bunch of paintings that are called Bashi-Bazouk because a Bashi-Bazouk was a common theme to paint. It's an irregular Ottoman mercenary. So it's a Turkish term that literally translates as headless, and it references their reputation for fighting without discipline, often for plunder. So what Western and French artists are doing when they're painting these exotic figures is they're painting someone from another world, from another culture that's maybe kind of scary and has some myth involved. And it might not be that accurate in terms of the lens through which they're seeing them, but the way they painted these individuals when they sat for them is incredibly detailed and interesting. Bargue uses the subject as a vehicle for a virtuosic technique. The water pipe, the silk garments, and the patterned textiles are rendered with absolutely incredible precision. Incredible. The texture and detail dominate the scene. But at the center of the painting is the body. Now, in this particular Bashi-Bazouk by Charles Bargue, the body is bare-chested, it's poised, it's meticulously lit. The musculature is defined, but absolutely not exaggerated. Now remember, let's go back to the first painting that we talked about today, and if we're talking about that painting, which was painted in the Enlightenment but reflected classical Greek times, or if we're talking about classical Greek times themselves, the muscles are exaggerated. The people are supposed to be heroic. They're supposed to be mythological. The man is it's an idealized form that we all have to live up to. This is different. What's going on in this painting is different. The musculature is defined but not exaggerated. Okay, the man here is a real person. It's not someone we're supposed to look up to in the sense of someone that transcends the emotions that we all experience. This man is calm, he's alert, and most of all, he's grounded. Bargue, the painter, was a master draftsman. He was known for his drawing course that trained artists like Van Gogh. The painting reflects the same focus on anatomy and surface, but with actually a theatrical edge. While it is Orientalist in style, the figure here is not sensationalized. His gaze is steady. He's not framed as violent or uncivilized, which the Bashi-Bazouk were in mythology. The painter is just painting him as a man. He's simply here, and he's present in his body as it is. Why depict the body this way? Well, Bargue gives us both spectacle and dignity at the same time. That is what this painting achieves and what makes it really special. It's actually a very tiny painting, by the way, so most of the views that you're seeing here are kind of blown up. But that speaks even more to the level of detail. So here the male form is used to demonstrate artistic mastery, but also to challenge the viewer's expectations of exoticism and agency. Remember, the Bashi-Bazouk were these nearly mythological figures. I mean, there were real Bashi-Bazouk, but the way they were seen in the Western mind probably wasn't exactly like they really were. But this guy, this Bargue who's painting them, is really challenging us to see him as a human, right down to the foot. To me, his foot even looks imperfect and human and real and raw. The key idea here is this isn't just a body in costume. The body isn't just a costume. This is a portrait of control, of a man painted with complexity, even if the context around him is simplified and almost caricature or mythologized. Each of these paintings that we talked about today here at the Metropolitan Museum in New York City shows us not just how the male body looks, but how it's been imagined, interpreted, and assigned meaning across time. Socrates becomes timeless virtue. Courbet's model becomes raw human reality. Johannesson's diver becomes psychological tension. And Bargue's mercenary becomes spectacle with dignity. How we paint bodies says something about how we see them, how we see the world, what's going on in history, what we're trying to achieve at that time as people, and how we want those people to be seen. In a world where male beauty is still shaped by silence, bravado, or impossible ideals, these works here at the Met remind us the male body has always been more than form, and our concept of it has changed throughout time, and that is a fascinating study in and of itself. It's a mirror, and art lets us look. Check out my other Met videos right here on this channel, my videos about MoMA, my videos about the Frick, and the other great art museums of the world. I also do videos about natural history museums, including the La Brea Tar Pits, including the American Museum of Natural History in New York. The top 10 treasures there are definitely worth seeing if you're in the city and you want to expand a little bit beyond art. I hope to see you in more videos about museums and art and history. Can't wait. Say hi in the comments.